So welcome to to Studio 2 from the conference, sending live from Amager, and a panel on creative industries and design, and maybe interesting talks about story worlds as well. And I'm really proud to present 3 guests. First here, Esben Toft, who's animation director and writer and creator of universes. He did a feature animation film called The Great Bear, and are doing right now a animated television show called it's called Kiwi and Stretch. Yeah. And is also the one of the creators and directors and designers of the Netflix series called The Rain, which is, I think it's actually the most seen Danish produced television show with over 13 million viewers worldwide. Yeah. So that's something. And also in my living room here, I have Isabella Eklöf, who's a Swedish-born director of live action and a screenwriter as well. She directed a film called Holiday, which was very well received internationally and reviews, and also won a long list of prizes. Was nominated for Best Film at the Sundance Festival, and it won the Danish Film Award, both of them. It's a really interesting film that you should see, and a bit troublesome as well.
Yeah, traumatizing.
Traumatizing as well. She also wrote the film called Border, or Grænse, that some of you might recognize as it is an adaptation from L.V. Lindqvist's novel, and he was also the writer who wrote the Little Right One in. So Border was directed by Ali Abbasi, a very talented director as well. And the screenplay, which was an adaptation, won the European. No, it was nominated for European Best Screenplay, and won Guldbaggen, which is the Swedish Film Academy screenwriting prize. Isabella also directed episodes of the Apple TV show called The Servant.
Just Servants.
Servants.
Yeah.
Servants. Yeah. And we also have Gunnar Wille with us, and Gunnar is like our Nestor. He was like a transmedia story world guy before that even was a word, and he has made around 50 books for children, worked in television, radio, art installation, artworks, animation, games, any genre you could think of.
Yes.
This has been there. There's also, you also, you could say, invented the Danish film schools education for animation, and the first education for gaming called the Danish Academy for Digital Interactive Entertainment. So the first gaming education in the Kingdom of Denmark. So, and he's like an institution in Danish, you can say, media world. So if you noticed, we have the same last name, so we're related somehow. Gunnar is my uncle.
Yes.
Yeah. So that in place, I think we need to see actually some before we start talking and answering questions, and I think you should all be welcome to just answer, make a mark in the chat or direct your questions to our guests during our talk, and you will be able to ask questions. But first, since you might not know all of their work, we should see some of it. I'll start by showing a sound as a show reel from Esben, and it should be right on your screen here.
First, you saw like a short clip from a movie called The Great Bear, which is a story about the sibling jealousies set in a fantasy universe in Sweden, like an imagined Sweden. And then you saw a short clip of a film called Beyond Beyond, which is sort of like an Orpheus and Eurydice for kids. About a rabbit kid who loses his mother and then goes to the land of the Feather King to get back his mother. And last you saw like a short clip of the rain with some destroyed Tivoli in Copenhagen. And I think we're ready with the clip, right?
Yeah. Then I'll show a trailer for Border.
Would actually be good to show both. Maybe just we don't have to watch the whole trailer, but it would be good to see the difference.
Yeah. Okay, we can do that. So now we go for Border first.
råkade bara köra förbi.
Vilken överraskning.
När jag var liten trodde jag att jag var något speciell. Sen blev jag vuxen och fattade att jag är bara människa. Kul och konstig människa med kromosomfel.
Det är väl inget fel på dig. Det är mycket du inte känner till. Var fick vi det där?
Det här? Vem är jag?
Du ska inte lyssna för mycket på vad människor säger.
I hela mitt liv så ingenting.
Stanna, polis!
And last, I'll just show something completely different from Gunnar, and then we'll start the talk. Okay, sorry, Gunnar, this was actually the wrong film, but
It was absolutely the wrong film, yes.
but a beautiful film anyway.
Yeah.
So I'll try to find the right one.
Okay.
We could just start the talk anyway. Right, I find the right film, and we'll show it in a minute.
And
Okay.
And I'll show a trailer for Holiday while. So I'll just find some clips, and then while I'm doing that, I think we should just start and have a chat about. Okay, all of these films are in a way representing something that is unusual in Denmark and in Scandinavian film production and media production, since they are sci-fi or fantastic or in that direction, which is not that common. So what is your, that would be my first question. How did you end up doing stuff like this? What was your first inspiration, and why did you decide to make science fiction?
Yeah, well, I think I started playing Dungeons and Dragons when I was 11, and it was the coolest thing I had ever tried. And then I saw Blade Runner when I was 12, and it was the coolest thing I had ever seen. And then I started making computer games when I was 14, and I only wanted to make computer games all my life. And realized that, well, at that time, the games we were making, they didn't really have anything inside them, they didn't have any soul. So I knew I wanted to do something fantastic, but not in games. And then through film school, I found out that, well, of course, films, that's where the soul is. I've always been doing things that I really, really, really loved, and fantastic things have always been great. But it really needed like a human story to it to really make sense.
Yeah, because they're metaphors. You know, that's what they're there for. The fantastic, like they're there to explore things in the human condition that are hard to talk about and to elevate them.
Yeah.
You know, how would it be to actually be a war hero? You know, we can't talk about that in a contemporary setting because it's so fraught with PTSD and the terrible politics.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and also if you want to tell a story, I've been doing a lot of children's films, and for instance, if you tell a story about sibling jealousy, it's kind of a, you know, if you said that in an ordinary setting, it's pretty, you know, unwatchable. It could be unwatchable, but if you said it in a fantastic version of a Swedish forest, and the sibling jealousy takes place with 2 kids and a bear that's like 30 meters tall with 99 trees on its back, it's suddenly really interesting to watch this drama. And
this is exactly how we've been telling stories throughout the history of humanity, like the dancing bear, like in the campfire. This has always been like the metaphor.
If I can put something in here. Because I'm so old, so in the 50s when I was a kid, everything was very boring, but I met science fiction only in novels. there were some few science fiction films, but they were very bad. But there was a lot of fantastic books with science fiction, and especially in the 60s, where a lot of artistic writers start to write science fiction. And that was deeply influenced on me, because that brought me into fantastic worlds. And I think that's what happens with science fiction, that it opens up a world that is a little bit like our own world, but then it's out there on another planet, or where in the future. So that was my start. I just loved science fiction. I was eating books with science fiction. And then when I started to make stories myself, that was exactly what I wanted to do. So the first cartoon I got published was like a time travel story. And it's been like that since. So that's my way into it.
Okay, and now I think I'm ready with the right clip for you, Gunnar. So
okay,
it should be up here.
Verden skal være farvet og strippet.
Nej, det er fint, tror jeg. Okay, I'm sorry about that.
The rest is the same.
The rest is the same.
Walking around in my working space and thinking.
You got an introduction to one lovable character of yours called Skrumpen from Outer Space, which is a quite famous figure that had followed you around.
Yeah, since the mid-70s, it appeared in my brain, and then I got it out and into a lot of different medias, to books, to television, to theater, whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. And maybe now we talked about science fiction and the trouble making that genre in the 70s. I would like to ask the young ones how it has been to actually be interested in horror or science fiction, and making that in a Danish or Swedish or Nordic context.
Well, I think we have slightly different experience. Why don't you start?
Yeah, I mean, as an animation director, it's almost expected that you do something fantastic, because the medium just wants that. But when I've always had this idea that I need to have 5 projects at the same time in some way to make it work, that I can live from it. And the rain just appeared in my head as it would be really cool to make this, because I like the genre of post-apocalyptic. And then I tried actually to sell it different places, but everybody said it's really cool, but this can never happen in Denmark. And then my scriptwriting partner, Jannik Theim-Osholt, he had a meeting with Netflix, just an introduction meeting, and then they asked him casually, do you have anything with young adult content from the Nordic countries? And he was really busy at the time, and we've been working like 5-6 years on this just as an idea. We both knew that we will never make this. It's just a love child that we want to make. And then they said, this is exactly what we're looking for, because they were looking at this Scandinavia as a very very ordered place where all the systems work. We have almost no corruption. Everything is working so well. So what if it wasn't? Which was the same idea that was the basis of the rain. And then they just called us and said, we want to make it now. And then we started making it. So it was very hard until it was not hard anymore. I mean, it's actually the reception in Denmark was not so good, but the reception out in the world was really good. And I think in some way it's I have this notion that that apocalypses, they never take place where you live. Where you live, they always take place in other places. It's very hard to imagine an apocalypse where your home is or where your everyday is. We also spent quite a lot of time on, I have some visual examples I can show later maybe. I spent a lot of time in the beginning just driving around in Google Street View, just taking photos of something that looked very much like Denmark. And then sort of painting that as apocalypse. I tried finding places where I felt very, very comfortable. Like my brother's house, he lives in a house I didn't. I lived in an apartment. I thought my brother's house, that's the most everyday Danish thing that you can imagine. And I painted it as like an apocalypse overgrown thing, and it was very, very unnerving, unsettling,
Cool.
and it started to work through that.
I mean, that's one of the magic things about the sci-fi is the what if. What if you take this and then you fuck it up? You know, it's so exciting to the brain to see that change. You know. Yeah, really. Yeah. And it's also a funny thing we realized was that you actually have to make something very screwed up in the picture to really see that is apocalypse. Yeah, right.
When you're visually working with the apocalypse, in the beginning when we made the rain, we sort of had we had so many leaves, like old leaves we could spread out. And in all the backgrounds, and we realized people don't see it. It just looks like normal. So we started making like a visual thing that we had to have one really big broken thing somewhere in the image, and the rest doesn't really matter. Like if you have one like huge wrong thing.
Yeah, it's so funny. That's also again like the brain just picks up on this thing you don't need. Yeah,
exactly.
Very funny.
I think one of the hardest things about making apocalypse in Scandinavia was that it's really hard to find somewhere where people haven't mowed their lawns in the background. Actually, really, because we had to record most of the stuff pretty close to Copenhagen because of the days, the number of recording days we had, and even places where we booked it like half a year in advance. The people we rented it from would somehow get some guy out to mow the lawn because there was a film crew. So we spent quite a lot of money on like recreating vegetation.
Right.
Because it's it's just so clean here.
Yeah, I mean that's the whole and not just the lawns. It's just so fucking clean everywhere. You don't really find. I mean, you have to really look for the.
Even the forests, even the forests in Sweden are very clean and nice.
That's because they've all been destroyed by wood industry, but that's another discussion.
So we have two problems, and that is that we're used to look at the apocalypse in an American context.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
And then that we are too cultivated.
Yeah, we're so clean.
We're so clean. That's really.
I think it's interesting to hear Esben talk about problems getting this kind of idea sold in Denmark, because I think it's a basic thing in especially in the film culture. I mean, I met the same thing in the 70s when I came with my strange stories with this character from outer space and whatever I came with. They all said no, it has to be social realism. It has to be the daily life and hopefully a very bad daily life from characters, not any science fiction. So in the 70s, it was impossible, totally impossible. I couldn't be allowed to make anything. I did my own things, but in a small published house with a cartoon, with a time traveling guy, Parkour, his name was. But then I had to wait to the 80s. In the start of the 80s, suddenly it was, everything changed. Everybody was bored with this terrible social realism. So then there was a room for me and my space character. It was overnight, everything opens, and I've been living from it since then. But I can see that now a long time has gone, and when we look at Danish films, and not like your film Border, which is a fantastic film with really strange characters in a strange universe. most of the films that are made in Denmark are from the daily life of people around 40. I mean, and that's it. That's the sci-fi is there's very little room for it.
True. And then we have a question. We have questions coming up here. So we have a question from Rikke. Would you state your question, Rikke, if you're online?
My question is to Esben.
Yeah.
What countries was The Rain most popular in, and why those countries? And then maybe very briefly about why not in Denmark? Thank you.
Well, it was most popular in South America. It's really huge there, and I think it's so exotic in South America. I think pale people in pine forests, that's just unbelievable there. Our actors, they say they almost cannot go to South America because they are so popular that they can't walk on the street. So I think that's a part of it, the foreignness of it. And why not in Denmark? Well, it's been really popular among the target group, like young adults. They have all seen it in Denmark, all of them. But the grown-ups, they think it's not really for them. But it's also a show about that the grown-ups have destroyed the world, and now the young people have to take over. And how do they do that? I mean, in The Rain, everybody over 30 is evil. And the people over 30 who watch it, it's not for them. It's for young adults. And so you know, and the people who reviewed it in the media, they were not young adults. I think that's also a part of it. It's really focusing on things that people who are young adults are really interested in. It's like love and what should I do with my life and where should I go, and there's nothing for me. Where do I find something for me? That really resonated in the.
Could be a generational shift as well, because people 30s and up in Denmark are very comfortable. You know, they have an easy, good life. It's easy to get good paying jobs, while the younger generation is much more shaky. Like they're much more unsure about the future, and like maybe that kind of thing resonates more with them. And the reasoning wasn't so popular in Denmark, maybe by grown-ups, that they feel very safe and secure, and they have no need to watch that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's funny that saying that it wasn't popular in Denmark. It was. It totally was popular in Denmark.
Sorry, not as popular,
but not among people who are my age, which is funny.
Okay, thank you. We have a question from Zoe as well. If we can unmute you for Isabella.
Yes. Hello. Can you hear me? Okay. Thank you so much for this panel. I'm really excited by everyone, but I guess my first question is for Isabella. I'm personally interested in prosthetics and makeup and how they change the human face. I was wondering if you could give us a bit of an insight into how it was, if you had any work designing the prosthetics, or how you conceived when you were working on the screenplay for Border, the change of the human face and how that might impact the performers, work with emoting in a recognizable way.
I'm afraid I can't really help you because I wasn't on set, so I'm not sure what happened there. But I mean, as far as I understand, well, I know two things. One is that, like, Eva, for example, I mean, the actors just have to act like they would normally do. I mean, you can't see your own face while you're acting, so you wouldn't necessarily know how your expressions are. I think they would just have to do like you always do, stay true to the characters and defend them and be natural and relaxed, and whatever comes out, comes out. Solidaric to the character. Secondly, I know that Ali was a little bit inspired, at least I was inspired, and I think Ali was a little bit inspired as well by the idea of trolls being a metaphor for Neanderthals. like these stories came from like ancient meetings with Neanderthals, and we still have a grudge against them because we annihilated them, didn't we? So they're actually going for that look a little bit.
That's fascinating. Thank you so much.
No worries.
And Sarah has a question for the panel.
My question for all of you is, when you feel like you have a creative block, what are your favorite methods to start fantasizing again or getting inspiration?
I don't think creative block has anything to do with fantasizing, to be honest. For me, creative block is all about not daring to go to the page. I can have tons and tons of ideas, but I don't dare write them down because what if they're bad? To me, the only way to get over a creative block is to go to an office where people are watching you and you feel professional and it's your job. And that it just happens.
Good advice.
Yeah.
I'm sure that it has not anything to do with luck. We who know, who works with this, we work hard, and you have to work hard all the time.
Yeah, but you can't work hard all the time. Sometimes you're too scared, and that's why I'm saying it's so important to have people around you.
Okay, I'm not sure I've experienced being scared. For me, it's like I have a technique I call not controlling my brain, not thinking, just sitting down very often with drawing something or writing something, and then losing the control, and then just let it come, whatever comes. And sometimes what comes is not bad for you, or it's not good for you. It's a terrible thing, because what are in your brain can be very strange. But just let it come out, and then when you have it, then you can start to work with it and change it and take away things you don't like. So that's my method.
And actually, I think if the problem is that you're not getting ideas, that you're not getting, like, you're not fantasizing, I think usually the problem is that you're using all your creative energy on something else, and you have to stop doing that and give space and time for yourself.
Exactly. Yeah. Or take a walk, go and walk in the forest, the very nice, clean Danish forest. Take a walk in it, and ideas will come to you.
Walking always works. I think my method is having 5 projects, like not necessarily working on 5 projects that are actually becoming something, but 5 ideas. So you know, if one seems like hard to work on, just work on something else that gives most joy, and then usually they contribute to each other.
Yeah, because you can.
Yeah, I think you're right. That is also a very good thing, and you have to have at least 5 ideas, because sometimes one idea gets through and the others don't, and then you maybe have more than that. So just work and change and take a walk and.
Yeah, I think one thing that I want to talk about is I think it's really dangerous, this idea about the lonely artist who's just in his room working with no restraints and just this creative genius. You know, you really need people around you that encourage you, that read your work, that think you're great, that need you to produce for them. You know, all the great artists have people surrounding them that support them.
Yeah, it's like 2 hours of writing costs 2 hours of hanging out with a good friend or something.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's one of the reasons that women have, like, for a long time not come forward, because they haven't naturally had a kind of support network like that.
Yeah, I also had a theater for many years. I traveled with that theater, because I make stories for kids. So I had my own kids, but I had to meet kids. And that was a nice way to make this crazy theater, go out in schools or libraries and act and tell stories, and then get reaction from them. Then you know a lot about what your stuff is. If they get bored, they just start to talk to each other or leave or whatever. They're not polite. They if they're entertained, you can feel it immediately.
Sure. And Stephen is on the. You're here, Stephen. You have some questions for the panel.
Yeah, thanks everyone. This is a fascinating discussion. I was just curious for all the panelists about that your discussion about what was possible within Denmark, and I was wondering how much the rise of streaming like Netflix and HBO Nordic is kind of inspiring sci-fi and fantasy. Is it because would more people be willing to come up and develop these ideas because there's a real chance of getting it made? Or do you think that now we've just had a sort of change in audience demand? Is it that maybe a younger generation here wants to get away from the social realism that the state broadcasters tend to prefer? So I'm sort of curious about how changing structures might affect the type of things you create.
My observation in Denmark has definitely been that the shift has nothing to do with the Danish film industry or Netflix or anything, but there's a new generation of filmmakers coming up, and they're not as boring as the old ones. Like, they're not 50-year-old comfortable established directors that don't have anything to tell anymore.
I think you're right, but I also think that they like to go to other places. They go to YouTube and make, instead of saying, okay, the Film Institute said no, then I can't do anything. Then they said, okay, then I just do something, and I go to YouTube or whatever. And so the social media chains have opened up a lot, and I think that's really great, because you can make, for very little money, you can make great things. And then you really got out of the jail and into this total international world.
Yeah, but I've always made stuff like that. It's just it's not always been produced.
Yeah, exactly. We all are there.
Yeah. It's not more weird and strange than the stuff I did just before.
No, yeah.
Last two films were like rabbits going to the world of the dead was one of them, and the other one was kids meeting a 30-meter tall bear with 99 trees on its back. I mean, the rain is just,
but maybe your luck is that as you said yourself, in animation there are more openness into fantasy and I mean, of the stuff I've been doing since the 80s has been in the fantasy world, and I have no problems getting my stuff out, and the kids love it. So it's so the audience, if you have kids as an audience, I think it's easier.
But I also think that the streaming services, they are really letting people do more sci-fi, because the rain was, if it was just in Denmark, we could never have made it, because the audience was too small. It's like a niche thing. So having it on a platform that's all over the world allows it to be all over the world. And what's really cool about that is that you see like weird sci-fi projects from South America, for instance. You can see that, and you would never normally have gotten that. It's really interesting with the local aspect of it.
Yeah.
And Netflix, I know they are producing more sci-fi stuff now. There's a real demand for it. So I think streaming services have a lot to do with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like we're returning to the quality television that I grew up with, like when the best international movies came to television.
Yeah.
Okay, I think that was an answer for you, Stephen, and for all of us. And Delilah, you have a question for Isabella.
First, I'd just like to say this is such a thrill. I've seen both Holiday and Border, and brilliant work. Holiday was painful as much as Border was beautiful. So thank you for fabulous representation of women directors. Yay. But in particular, I was fascinated by Border, which was such a brilliant film, because I love when fantasy and imaginative versions look at how the myths have remained, mythologies remain, and to actualize mythologies on screen in a way that so naturalizes them that they never really went away, that they're always there. Just sort of right beyond our vision. So I'm really curious. I mean, compared to, of course, this is from Lindqvist's story, and Let the Right One In was so brilliant. But that was a vampire, and vampires have often been, in amongst us supernaturally. But mythologies are different. They're more like, I don't know, primeval or something. So how did you make it feel so natural? It was just brilliantly done.
Well, I mean, of course, a lot of it is Ali's work and work on set, and I think you have to approach something like this by first taking the myth seriously, and secondly, being realistic about it. Like, so you're mixing a serious take on the myth with some kind of realism, and I think that's what made it interesting. Is like it was almost social realism at some point, you know, with the way she lived with this guy who's drinking beer and they're watching TV and their life is so drab. But at the same time, it's super elevated because it's within this like magical universe. So even those like those drab objects, those everyday realistic objects are stylized to be like ultra realistic in an unrealistic way. And that's how I think you bring magic into the world like that. Also, I personally have a very strong connection to Swedish mythology. I grew up with a lot of storytelling and stuff, so I know a lot about it. So I think things get better and more elevated when you know a lot of details that you can put in it.
That's brilliant. Tusen tack.
Tack.
And Susanna, I don't know if you have a comment or a question or both.
Hello. I think it's sort of both. I was reading this book about, I mean, not to just sort of get into a wild quoting mode by Michael Saller. He writes about disenchantment, like how our world, and this is an old idea by Max Weber, so it's not, but how our world has become sort of disenchanted because we are so focused on effectiveness and rationalism and, you know, industrial revolution and the way we talk, we live now with this very rational lives. You were talking a little bit about how clean Scandinavia is and all this, right? So he says that the function of fantasy fiction is sort of to get this enchantment back into the world. And so I just wanted to sort of question, or have you ever thought about something like this, like your work actually bringing back some of this enchantment that we seem to have lost?
Who was the question for?
For all of us, all of you.
Yeah, totally. It's to me, it's really a big thing to bring that back to kids. I mean, one of my absolute favorite filmmakers is Hayao Miyazaki, and he said that when he made Spirited Away, it was because his friend's daughter was becoming 10 years old, and he was looking at her and seeing that she was sort of losing her the notion that the world was a magic place, and he sort of wanted to give that back to her. And I think that's the most beautiful thing you can say. I mean, it's a great thing to have the world feel magic.
I guess I have a different perspective. I mean, I'm a bit of a realist myself. I think it's a complicated question actually, because what do you mean when you say enchantment? Like there's a place in the brain for religious experiences, right? It's its own little center, and it probably needs to be stimulated for us to feel like whole human beings. So I think with the death of God, we came into an era where we don't know how to handle this feeling that we actually need, the feeling of like submission and worship and you know, submission to higher powers, to things we don't understand, and worship and being grateful to something that's abstract. So I think, to me, as a very realistic and effective person, that's what it's like all about. Like it's so, and it's a part of being creative as well. Like the way, you know, we were talking about earlier, is like emptying yourself and that just letting it come to you. It feels very religious. It's like, you know, like you said, the rain just came to you. It's just there and fully formed. And to me, as a realist, that has to do with the subconscious. You know, we are only aware of about 10% of what's going on. You know, and your brain has, to me, your brain has been working on the rain for a long time, and then it's sort of presented to you, and just happy and thankful and relaxed and going with it. You know, it's super important.
Yeah, that's a very important point, because for me, it's my stories is always about making the fantastic. Just let it come and open up and don't control it. And now I make stuff for kids, and most of the stuff kids get is always about learning something, getting control, being a good person or whatever. And I want to make stories that just give them free. Just see here, it's anarchy. You can't control the fantastic things, and just let it come and don't be scared about it. Just let it let it out and play with it. That's my goal for making fantastic stories for kids.
You don't have to understand it. It's
Exactly.
Very freeing.
Yeah, and that's a very important point.
Yeah.
Because everything is, you have to understand it, and now you have to learn something. And if you tell the kids, now I won't teach you anything, just tell you a nice, fun story and let it go. And another thing that now we talk about the past, in the 70s, a lot of kids was interviewed that was asked, how will the world be in 2000? And then all the kids said the world will go away. There's no world in 2000. And that was because everything they would get is very depressing things about how terrible everything was. So they couldn't believe in the future. And of course, when we make stories about the future, like rain, the whole thing goes very bad. We tell that story, but we also have to tell stories that the future can actually be fantastic.
Sure. And Carlos, you have a question for Gunnar?
Yes, hi. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, basically what I just wrote, which is I'm very interested in elements called novums. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, but novums are basically key ideas that connect our current reality with non-reality in sci-fi novels, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm just wondering, a question for Gunnar, if what are those elements that you mentioned that connect our reality with your non-reality work you've done? How can you connect our reality to a future, as you've been mentioning, for example, in your work with kids or other things you've done? Thank you.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, perfectly.
Okay, thank you for your question, because I think that that's exactly what I'm working with. All my stories takes place in very natural worlds. They're close to social realism. It's a world that you can recognize as a world you are living in yourself. And then there will always be one element that is fantastic, like a boy who can, like imagine, he can say, give me an elephant, and there's an elephant. And there is this character from outer space that lands, but it lands in a world that looks like our world. So and that always creates funny situations and strangeness. So I want, and in that way, it will always be like the world. You can see your own world through other glasses when you see it through a strange character from outer space. So I combine it very easily. I just let it happen. Something can be fantastic and the rest of the world can be not fantastic. I also have a series of stories with kids, some boys that can time travel, and they have find a room they can go into and then they can travel. But only them, and the rest of the world is just exactly like the world we live in. So that's the way I work with it.
Thank you.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you very much.
Yeah.
And then from Eamon, there's a question to Isabella about the literary references for the work on Border, what you especially worked on to realize that film.
I don't understand the question. Why do you assume that I have literary references?
I don't think Eamon is able to use a mic. So.
Right. Yeah. Well, I don't think there were any literary references.
But there were a novel.
There was a short story, of course. Yeah. Border is based on a short story. Yeah. So yeah.
So
but
maybe
I don't see that as a reference.
No, that's
like
an adaptation.
Yeah.
But maybe that's an interesting question. How do you work on adaptation?
Yeah. I mean, the basic thing was that we took the story pretty much as it was with and all the elements of sort of magical realism, like this ultra realism on the heightened plane, was already in the short story, but we added the B plot, and that was basically my mission given to me, like very specifically by Ali. That you have, okay, we we need like this pedophile story, crime thing to make it a film and not just, you know, a piece of art. And so, yeah, that was basically it. We tried to integrate that B plot in the basic story, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work as well. But but yeah, that was the job, and of course, there was also a very interesting struggle with dialogue, because the dialogue in the short story is very, very stylized. And sometimes it comes out great, like they talk in this elevated way, and sometimes it's cringe as fuck. And it was very hard to find the balance there. And we had a lot of struggles immediately where I would take up lines and you would put them back in. Yeah, so yeah, those are some of the things you work with when you adapt.
And then talking about creative work and writing and developing material. So a reoccurring theme on the conference has been building universes or story world building. And I think I know all of you have thoughts on that I would love you to share. But,
yeah, of course.
Yeah,
of course. Yeah, but it's I think it's different for every story that you build. That the kind of world building you're doing for the story is you know, is specifically for that story. Like for instance, The Rain was very much about taking the world that we have and how can we make it make the world that we know. How can we destroy that world? So the world building there was very much about finding good places to make them look wrong. That was a big part of it. And the funny thing is, we spent a lot of time on The Rain on actual real research with the virologists and Danish biodefense, and talking to them about what would really happen if this happened in Denmark. Even though it's like heightened sci-fi what we're doing. A lot of the research was based on real stuff. In second season, there's a lot of CRISPR stuff going on in the background. So everything you see on the screens in the background, that's how CRISPR kind of looks. We were taught how to do CRISPR, which is gene editing.
What is CRISPR?
CRISPR, that's DNA editing. It's a rather new thing that you can actually, like, you can take fluorescence from a mushroom and put it into a rabbit and make a fluorescent rabbit, for instance. It's really wild what they can do now. And we talked to all the people that you've seen in the media, like the last year, talking about coronavirus. We had talked to them before about the virus in The Rain, like how would it work? So and it's pretty funny because it sounds like we researched for a grounded show that was very real, but it was very wild show. So the world building there was. We started out wanting to make a grounded show, but it turned out that what we were doing was actually heightened sci-fi.
I mean, I think that's the best you can do, is to know all the shit and then do whatever you want, you know.
Yeah.
I think that has the most ground to be like a rich and compelling story. You know the shit, but you're not locked down by it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the most crazy thing for me on The Rain was that we have holograms. Like we have little holograms in the show, and there's no way you can do holograms. They don't work in reality, and nobody pointed that out ever at all. So during the show, we found out that, well, actually, it's more fun to make more than to make it more grounded. It's more fun to make it wilder than to make it more like reality.
And also, that's the nature of reality. I mean, there's so much unknown factors that even if you try to calculate everything how it would be in the future, so much unknown factors that you will inevitably be wrong. So why not just throw in some unknowns, you know?
Yeah.
I have a little different from you, because I have made a universe, and I made it in the early 80s with that character. They came from outer space. That was my first element for and at that time, I didn't knew that it was going to be a huge universe, but it grew, and then I put elements to it, where it came from and how the universe is fit together. And now I have this huge universe, and all stories I make will be in that universe. It maybe it's another part of the universe, but the same laws about how things works will be there. And it took me about 20 years to develop that universe into the stage as it is now. So around 2000, I took that decision that from now on, everything I do will be inside that universe. And then, so I have this story about the Scrumpton from outer space, and that was the start of the universe and where it came from. And then I put other elements into it, and I have this story about the boys that can travel in time, and they are in the same universe. And for me, the great thing about having a universe is that you have a lot of elements all ready to work from. And I love to make series of stories, not one book, but 12 books or 10 books, or a television show with 20 episodes, because when you have, and probably you, Esben, who makes series, when you have characters that you know how they act, you put them together with other characters. A lot of stuff just happens for you. The story grows. You don't have to think so much about it. It's just like, oh, yes, they say that, and that happens. Fantastic. So to have a universe is for me really a great thing, but it takes a long time to develop a universe.
It's like setting up a set of rules, and
exactly.
That help you shape everything.
Yeah, exactly.
It's also like different, like if you do a series, it has to have one kind of engine in it. Like it has to have characters that can keep on making stories, whatever you put on them. While when you make a film, I feel it's more like you have a main character with a problem that can be solved in some way, and then when that's solved, there's no more left.
Or not.
Or not, of course. Or not. But you know,
yeah.
Like a film is more like one thing, and a series is more like an engine that can keep producing material.
Exactly, and never solve the problems in the series, because then it stops. So don't solve the problem, just keep going.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry because I have to go now.
Let's do it.
Oh, that's really sad.
I am, and so it's been great to be with you guys, and I think we'll see each other tonight. I have to leave. Thank you. It was great.
See you, thank you, Gunnar. But we'll stay tuned here, and I know there's a question from Rikke to the panel.
Yesterday we had a panel on writing the fantastic, and the authors there agreed that today the young people don't read, and it's really sad, and that the book can do deeper stuff. I think what they meant was like deeper stuff than films and TV shows. So they sort of ended on the note that it's really sad for the young people and culture. And since I'm one of these people who love to watch films and Netflix shows, I was wondering whether you had some thoughts about whether we maybe do see a shift from storytelling not being through words, but going back to storytelling being through images and visual stuff, and whether that's a good thing and not a bad thing.
I don't think it's either good or bad. I think it's just different. And it's a little bit of bullshit that reading is necessarily deeper. It can be more complex, that's true. And I think the biggest problem in the film and TV industry is the constant salesmanship. It's kind of hard to make something that doesn't necessarily sell so well, which is different from books, because you can write whatever shit and it can be a hit even though everyone didn't think it was going to be. I think that's the major issue, not the format as such.
I think also it's shifting because audiobooks are becoming so available.
Yeah.
I know my kids, they just listen to so many audiobooks. They also read, but they hear books more than they read them.
And that's how the story originated. It was oral tradition told by the campfire. So I don't know why there's this obsession with the written word being such a holy thing. And besides, to be honest, modern literature is shit. Like I haven't read a good new book since like 2004. So yeah, that's bullshit.
So my colleague Jesper Juhl sometimes makes a point out of what if literature was invented today, and we would complain that it was so linear and not interactive and antisocial
and not good for you,
not good for your back, and very unhealthy working on.
I mean, you see that, you see people saying exactly that at the end of the 19th century, and they were right. Like all these milkmaids and the people's daughters were reading all these romance novels and getting idiotic ideas about how the white knights was going to go and save them. So any media can be used to create shit or wonderful stuff. It's just everything has its time, you know.
Yeah. Which I think the thing about that I'm most curious about. My parents, they thought that my computer was bad for me. I got a computer when I was 14, and I started making computer games, and they also thought computer games were bad. I think now some computer games are like novels, and now my kids have an iPad, and I think it's kind of bad for them that they have an iPad, but I have no clue if it's bad.
My brother's kids are like 100% on their things all the time. There's like no restriction and no nothing, and you can say that that's probably bad for them in certain respects, but also they are kind of evolving. You know, they're becoming a new type of human with a new type of instant connection to a screen and all the things you can do with that, you know. So I think to me this is just a meh. The young generation is always, you know, but the young generation is amazing, partly because of our new insights in psychology. You know, people are really every year getting better at being nice to each other, even though we have a sort of a fascist backlash right now. I think that's just a phase where everything is getting so. No,
that's so
it's not true.
Good answer. And then a question from Stephen to Isabella.
Yeah, let me just unmute. Sorry, I just had to stop crying there after the comment about literature being dead. This is what I was just really curious about, things you said about the B-plot in Border, right? Because I was just curious if you could say a bit more about that choice of merging a kind of Scandi crime story with fantasy, because it really struck me when I saw it. And for me, when I saw it, it helped me build out this image of the story world as being like, okay, they're living in the world of the bridge, but there's trolls in it. But then I thought maybe that's just me because I've seen a lot of Scandi noir, and that's how I mentally filled it out. So I was wondering, was that kind of the intention, to draw on some of the popularity of Nordic noir or the people's imaginary of it in order to build out the story world, or what was the choice behind the B-plot?
Yeah, absolutely. Of course. I mean, like I said, this is a super commercial business where we have to sell it. It's a primary. So, but yeah. So yeah, short answer. But then of course, you want to go and do that in a nice and grounded way. But there's no way this film would have got the huge budget that it got without something like that in it. So short answer, yes, absolutely.
Maybe that could be a question for Esben as well, because I think the bridge and the rain, there's a reference to the bridge in the rain. There's a bridge.
There is a bridge. Yeah, there's no reference to your show in the rain. Excuse me, you have to phrase the question for me.
Yeah. The reference to Nordic noir, for instance.
Yeah, of course, a lot. Of course, they wanted that a lot, and it's a big thing out in the world, so it's a selling point, of course.
And it's also part of a sort of a collective subconscious. We're like collectively going through this period, these trends of stories, and it shapes how we think. It shapes the ideas we get, I think.
Yeah. And also a reason why the rain goes to Sweden is because Denmark is too small for an apocalypse show. I mean, you can go anywhere on a bicycle within hours. So we had to go somewhere else. Yeah.
Can I just ask one quick follow-up? Because I mean, there's the salesmanship angle, but did you also find it an interesting creative challenge as well to try and fuse these genres?
Not really, no. It's just. Well, no, it's just how it is, you know. That's the basis of our job. I would definitely have found it more interesting to make a super weird art house film that nobody watched, but that's not how it works.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks for that.
What about you, Esben?
If I could have made more what?
If it was like a creative challenge for you
to make the ring, totally a challenge. It was we had to produce so fast. It was sold, and it was sold on the pitch, and we had to produce within like half a year. So we had to do all the research, write everything, build the world like really fast.
But so was there I think the question was, was there an upside to like the commercial pressure? Did that create somehow?
It made things possible.
But creatively, was there did it feed something?
Yeah, it did, because mainly like production wise, because everything we said we want to do this, it was possible. Like also everybody was so in awe of Netflix. So everywhere we called and said, can we come here and film, they said yes, of course you can.
So that gives like a nice flow.
Completely. Like there was nothing that was well, the things that were impossible were like weird things that were impossible. Like we could easily use all of Copenhagen, like anywhere would shut down for us during the production. Except like a gas station was really hard to get because they didn't want to be associated with apocalypse. So we couldn't like film the scene in a gas station where the gas doesn't work. But apart from that, it just having Netflix in the back just made everybody say yes, of course we want to do that.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
Yes is a very important creative word.
Okay, thank you. And Sarah, you have comments and questions, I think.
Should I just speak it?
Yes.
I was wondering if the two of you, if there is a mythology or a folktale that you're drawn to that you feel like hasn't been explored or that you want to explore, a Nordic or Greek or Celtic one, or do you even look into non-European mythology, or do you stick with what you know, in quotation marks?
So many. I can't even start.
Start with one.
Choose one.
Okay, so there's the Swedish Skogsrå or Huldra, which is a woman who lives in the forest and seduces guys, and they go crazy and they never want to leave the forest again. And she has either she has no back, or her back is like a wooden log. Also she has a tail, and if you meet a Huldra in the forest and you want to kind of call her out, so you tell her, I know you're a Huldra, I'm not gonna have sex with you, but you need to do it polite so she doesn't get mad and kill you. And you see her tail, you will say, I'm sorry, miss, but I think your underskirt is showing.
That's so cool.
Yeah, so there's a lot of like guys going moon crazy. And also in Sweden you can be bergtagen, which means that a woman disappears and just shows up again 5 years later with 5 kids, and that's because she was taken into a mountain by a troll and just lived there with him and had a family with him, and then somehow she escaped. There's like tons of stories like that in Sweden.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and also in Eastern Europe, there's even more. They're so great. Like they have like a river, a green river person.
Yeah,
who,
we have that too.
Yeah, you have that
Necken,
too.
Who plays the fiddle in the street.
Yeah, and what it's used for is kids don't go to the river because this guy will drown you.
Yes. Well, and that's a horse in some mythologies.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
But I'm right now developing a children's show which is taking place in this kind of universe.
Okay.
It's so cool, and so I can't not choose one.
If you want to see a film with like all of these in it, there's a Swedish film called The Apple Wars, Äppelkriget.
Yeah.
And it's a Swedish classic, and they all show up in there.
Yeah. It's so cool.
Yeah.
Just as a follow-up, I was wondering if you would be interested in looking into Japanese mythology, because I find it really fun that they have a lot of the sort of similar nature-based creatures. They also have a lot of like creatures that will drown you in the river if you're not careful. The kappa, where there's also like little tricks you can do to like sort of deal with them, and whether that sort of, do you have any thoughts about the personification of nature in these types of stories?
I have one Japanese story that I would love to do, but it's not exactly like a folktale or myth, but it's a ghost story. It's the one about the guy who is like happily married, but he goes off to live with a old rich woman for about 10 years to get some money and come back to his wife. And he does that, and when he comes back, like they meet and they're super happy and they have a passionate night together, and then in the morning he wakes up and she's actually dead and her long beautiful black hair is strangling him, you know, because she died and that's her revenge, like for him going away. And there's just something about that that's like super creepy and beautiful. Love to do that story.
Yeah, I don't dare do anything in Japanese from Japanese folklore, because someone is already doing that in animation so well that you know it's sort of taken.
Yeah.
So I think we have to find. I have to find something that's similar in the Scandi mythology.
I don't know. I don't agree. I think this whole. I mean, I understand if you have respect for someone making it better than you, but I think this whole cultural, like you have to stick with our culture thing is destructive. I think it's very important that we, all of us, dare to do things in every culture.
Yeah.
I've had to face this very much because I'm doing something in Greenland.
Yeah.
And people are like, why you're not Greenlandic, you know? And I think because there happens to be a story there that is important to me.
Yeah.
And I understand that there's been a white West European hegemony for way too long, and that's an issue. We need to address it, but also we need to be allowed to make each other's stories.
Yeah.
There's also this ghost story I wanted to make about like a murdered black guy in the US taking revenge on everyone, and also a sci-fi in Japan where there's like this woman's village in a mountain that just closed off from all the men because it's all apocalyptic, you know, like creating this woman's world. I don't think one should have like a reason to not do these things.
No, it's
just about having respect and doing research and
yeah, totally.
Yeah.
It's just because my biggest hero is doing that, so I'm afraid of copying.
Yeah, but copying is good.
Yeah.
Copying is great. I always copy. When you copy your great hero, your great master, that's when you, I think, do even your best work.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you're living up to something and you're putting yourself in there as well.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
you should do it.
Okay, I will look at it.
Yeah, good.
From a distance.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And I don't know if Delilah, if you have a question or a comment.
No, I was just chatting in the comment about the Huldra, which it's been made into several films. Most memorably, the Tale, the 2012 Norwegian horror movie, which was really, really good and made on a super low budget. So it did a great job. But yes, please make another.
I'd love to watch that film. I think the most interesting aspect of the Huldra is like this feeling that there's this guy who lives in a village and he's married, but he's just super melancholy all the time and he doesn't want to have sex with his wife and he's just distant and just goes off into the forest the whole time. There's just something very deep about that, like that mythological expression of, you know, depression or whatever, that when you're taken by the forest. There's just something about that that's very archetypical and cool and interesting.
Okay, thank you. So something completely different, but I know it was a question that came up with the writers panel, is how you engage with the audience, test audience, or test ideas.
Test audience is for losers.
But what about testing ideas?
Yes, that's an important part of the creative process. You have to always tell your story. You tell it again and again and again and again, and that's how you, in that meeting, you see what happens in the other person's brain. You should change and shape your story. It's super important.
I agree.
So is that just telling story, oral told stories? Or
yeah, it could be anything you feel like. I always make a poster like at the very start of a film concept because that's
cool.
It's, you should try it.
Yeah.
It's so creative because then you like realize what's the core of the story, what is it really about, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I usually draw like a beat board of the movie, like 12 drawings of what is this movie.
Oh, cool.
So it's like a visual thing.
Like moving through.
Yeah, and maybe not in the necessary. I tried on I did a movie called Beyond, the one about the one that's like the Orpheus and Eurydice movie. Where it was a very emotional movie, and I didn't really know what the setting would be like. So I thought, well, the way, you can show it.
Okay, we can show some of what
cool.
Esben is talking about.
Yeah, because in the beginning I didn't even know what kind of characters it should be. So, and it was about a kid losing his mother and going to the underworld. to get her back. So I tried drawing like different kinds of characters, and I thought, well, rabbits, they feel like the right kind of character for this story, because rabbits, they feel sort of expendable. Like there's so many of them, so one goes, one goes away. But if you're that exact rabbit, then it matters a lot. So I tried to make this rabbit, since it was a small kid who didn't know the rules of the world, I tried to make it look like as tiny, and it could be blown away by a wisp of wind, or it could break like, between two fingers, like make it really fragile. Then I sat in a room and just drew everything I thought belonged to the world of this story. So it was just a room from floor to ceiling of these drawings, just everything that could belong to this world. And then we sat down in the room and wrote the story based on these drawings, and we just picked out, well, this feels right here in the story, and the more correct they were for the story, we tried to take the pictures off the wall and put them higher. If they were more right for the story, we put them higher on the wall. So if you looked all the way to the ceiling, it was what the movie most should look like. Just trying out that kind of method. Yeah, just so many drawings, and it was such a cool process.
And the good thing about this is, like, when you're not using words, you're more connected, right? You don't know exactly why you have this composition or these colors necessarily. You might have some like abstract ideas or some general notions, but you just let it come out, and it becomes what it becomes for whatever reason. And then afterwards you can analyze. Yeah.
And then the more we knew what was in it, we tried to draw stuff that was exactly that. And everything that belongs to exactly this idea, I tried to draw that.
Can we check the poster for Holiday? Because that's my
if we can
example.
find
It should be easy to find, like if you Google poster Holiday and my name. So we haven't talked about this film, but this is the one I directed myself. These encompass what this story is about. It's like about luxury, bikinis, you having your sexuality being used, and also the color scheme, like the turquoise, but also like the blood and the sort of feigned innocence. So making something like that really early on, like, really gets you focused and makes you realize what you're doing.
So that was some insights to two different ways of developing the project. I think that's really cool to start out making the poster, or just start drawing as much as you can. To build the universe. I have an idea for anybody working in film and visual media. That is that they should always think of their work, even if it's realist, as a sci-fi or a fantasy film. Because then you have to think about the universe. Then you have to build it from the beginning, even though it's realist.
I don't know. I don't think you have to think that to know that it's a universe you're building. It's everything is a universe. Like, if you have something set in an American courthouse, then that's your universe. Like, it will already be your mind is full of images, right? So and even the clothes and colors, everything just pops up. So I don't think that's necessary to get that.
No. Okay, Sarah raised her hand.
I just wanted also to ask, maybe if you could talk a little bit about where your initial interest in telling stories came from. Like, if you can go back to the maybe beginnings of how you started getting into media and storytelling.
I think it starts way before you get into media. I think for me it was being sung to by my father. He always had sang this Swedish old ballads to me that were like long stories every night. Definitely the start, and of course reading at a young age.
Yeah, I think I come from a family where they tell a lot of stories. Like my grandparents, especially my grandmother, she's really good at telling stories, like about anything, just the old days or something fictional. And I was just that was all I wanted to do, was just hear stories.
Yeah, it's such a basic thing for like human social interaction. It's like it binds us together.
Yeah, completely.
Yeah, creates a common world,
Yeah.
And also the stories we tell about ourselves that are sort of ostensibly true, they're always an aspect of the truth, always something, you know, you want to be the truth, or, you know, it's all like creating identity, creating your own world, right?
Yeah. So Rikke has a question, I think, for Esben.
Yeah. I thought what Esben said, that he started with a drawing. So my question is, if the story of the film started with a drawing and not a narrative, because I think that is very intriguing.
The story of the rain. The story of the rain started with me.
No, not the rain. The film I Fjerkongens Rige, Rejsen til Fjerkongens Rige.
Ah, yeah, that story. No, it started somewhere completely different. It started with I had been doing a film called The Great Bear, which was about sibling jealousy, and it was my debut feature film, and it was really hard to make. It was sometimes I went to work on Thursday and came home on Monday. And after that film, I had got my first daughter during the production of that film. When I finished that film, I thought, well, it's so sad that we can't always be with the ones we love all the time. So when I was asked about what would I like to do as a new film, I thought, well, that feeling is the only thing I want to do now. So I made very strict rules about the film, that the production was very 9 to 5, very normal work hours. But I was completely filled with this feeling about that, you know, you want to be with the ones you love as much as you can. So I started making that film. And then from then on, we developed it visually. How can I turn this into this feeling into characters and into a world? And then, crazy enough, my wife, she was. It's about the mother dies and the father can't talk to the kids. And crazy enough, while we produced this film, my wife, she got cancer. So I was actually living the same world as we were doing in the film. She's fine now. She was cured. Everything's great. Nothing happened. It was just we just got really scared for a year while we did that film. So I was living the same universe as I was making at work, which was really crazy. So I kind of really knew what it was about at that point. Kind of knew what it was about. Yeah, that was a crazy way of building a story.
Yeah, sounds like a super great way to build a story. Just take the core of something that you're obsessed by.
Yeah,
just build whatever with it.
Yeah, every time I worked with a movie that I really felt connected to, it's been like directly connected to something in my life. Like The Great Bear is about sibling jealousy, and my brother and I, we were not good friends when we were small. We were close to killing each other when we were small sometimes, and now we are best friends. But I really knew that theme. Yeah,
and that connects to a pet peeve I have, because a lot of people, when they think they're talking about like art house films or like good films, they say they're character driven. But I don't think great films are character driven at all. I don't think character is very important. I think they're theme driven. I think they're driven by an intense feeling, a passion, an obsession, you know, like that.
Yeah. So, and Carlos has a question.
I don't have to ask out loud either, but I'll do it anyway. In case my daughter starts making a lot of noise, I'm sorry. Well, just as I wrote again, I'm just curious what you think about storytelling and climate change, because every time I see a film about climate change, it seems like it has more or less the same approach. So do you think it has been overused and or not? And could there be another different storytelling about it? Sorry?
What is that approach? That they all have. So, I haven't really seen any films about climate change.
It always seems that it's the worst possible case scenario. Right. And with climate change, I can imagine that there's so many others, because well, climate change could be mild, there could be worse. I think there's a lot of possibilities with climate change.
I 100% agree with you.
As a storyteller, what is your approach?
Yeah,
I'm going to unmute because it's very noisy.
Well, it sounds like you have a happy kid, so that's good. No, I 100% agree with you. I think this is a very typical example of lazy storytelling, where people are like, oh, we have this thing that everybody's talking about, and now we're going to talk about how bad it is, you know. that's stupid. Of course you need to talk about all, I mean, the fun thing about sci-fi is the what if, you know. Okay, so we take this thing and we stretch it out. What if? What happens? And we want to get into the details. We don't want to have like stupid political film about, I have to think about climate change. That's not interesting. So I'm 100% with you. Then I've actually had this thought a lot. You know, how can you make an interesting like futuristic film by actually trying to think about what really will happen, you know, when for example Denmark will exist no more and everybody's moved to the south because the Gulf Stream stopped working and the whole Scandinavia just became an ice sheet. But then we get reverse climate change because it's freezing and all of these things. It's fun.
But the rain is a bit about climate change.
It's totally not about climate change.
No?
It's no. There's no climate change in the ring.
No,
no. It's just a wild coronavirus.
Yeah.
But
there's a rain.
But there's rain. So there's something about the rain, and there's something about nature as the theme.
Yeah, it's true.
Revenge of nature, but that's always fun.
Yeah, it is. There are so many themes in there.
Yeah.
Something about revenge from nature. That's related.
It's about humans controlling nature, and it's really hard to control nature. And I talked to these really interesting scientists who are working at the university, working with the CRISPR, and actually working with changing nature, because they were. I think it was in 2008 or something that CRISPR was identified. It's like I couldn't do the exact explanation now, but you can edit DNA. You can take pieces of DNA and put it into other pieces of DNA, and you can really do some crazy things. And these scientists, they were so happy. They were almost like giggling with happiness, because this creates so much opportunity for good things in the future. I was, of course, not on that mission when I talked to them. I was on the mission of how did someone create a virus in this universe, and how could somebody cure it with this technology. But I think what I heard from them was way more interesting than what we actually did in the series, because the possibilities of the CRISPR technology is just
it's so endless. It's almost impossible to make something about, because you cannot possibly imagine all the factors that come into play.
They had such a good imagination.
Yeah.
I think if you I was pretty deep into working on the rain when we talked to them. But I think if you were not deep into working on anything and talk to them, I think you could make like a beautiful science fiction film about that. It's so fascinating. Yeah.
Well, do it.
Okay, another question is if there are concepts or story concepts that you have developed from and aesthetics that you became obsessed with, color schemes, locations, looks, or cinematography.
Well, I've had this obsession for a while about like a film screen looking like a stage, sort of like you put it up like completely flat and just have the characters walk in and out like it's a stage. And that, I don't think it creates a story necessarily, but it creates kind of a setup, I guess, for what kind of stories you tell. It's going to be like collectivistic stories where the interaction between humans are more important than what happens inside humans, maybe. I don't know if that's answered your question.
What about you?
I'm always working in images and writing at the same time. So I'm always obsessed with images and writing and sort of making that work together. I'm also really obsessed with an image should never be more important than the emotional content. I mean, a beautiful image doesn't have any
so true
right in this world if it's not loaded with something.
And that's why the art world sucks. Because it's fine to not have content. I hate that.
Yeah.
Sorry, Tom.
No, you're completely right. And I mean, making something epic, you can't feel anything inside it if it's not relatable. I mean, that's also why they drink coffee in space, because you that's like a small hook to yourself, to your own. And if it doesn't have like a relatable story, it's just colors and time and space.
Yeah. Actually, when I was developing Holiday, I had this concept that it was supposed to be like being stuck inside a a candy store.
Yeah.
It's like, it's fun for the first 5 minutes, and then you start getting like serious malnutrition.
Great.
Yeah. So that's how we develop like the colors and things and everything.
Yeah. But that's a great idea, because you can feel it when you hear stuck inside a candy store.
Yeah.
You can feel like, oh, good for 5 minutes.
That's exactly what the film is like.
Yes.
It really is. Okay, do we have any more questions, or I'll just talk and ask other questions, and that could be a question about inspiration from computer gaming aesthetics and storytelling.
Yeah, I think we both have a lot to say about that.
Yeah, I come from computer games. Well, what can I say about that?
They're cool.
Well,
some would say that the stories and games don't go together.
I grew up with the Sierra games. Have you guys played them?
Yeah.
They're super story driven. Like, they definitely influenced me. But I don't know how. Maybe that's the image of the screen where people are walking across. That's how it looks.
Yeah, they were cool. I mean, I was making games for a while, and I really got away from games because it was, it was very hard. It took such a long time to tell a story in a game compared to telling it in a movie.
Yeah.
When you have a movie, you write the story. When you make a game, you build so much stuff and have to make it work. You spend so much time on programming and graphics.
Also, you have to tell like 10 stories depending on what happens, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it was fun, but it was also, what you really wanted to get to was the emotional content, and that's pretty hard to get to.
I also dabbled in computer games. I took a class at film school a couple of years ago, and it was like a complete disaster. It was so bad. But one thing I realized is that the problem with storytelling in games is that because it's interactive, because it's based on free choice, you can't really build the catharsis. You can't really control the catharsis. It's too much up to the sea. So you can't get that nice arc, and go exactly there. So it's kind of, it's never going to be a story. It's always going to be something different. That's how I felt.
Yeah.
But maybe games are good for doing worlds.
Yeah, of course. And they're great for I think games are kind of also sometimes more intellectual than films. If you take a grand strategy game, for example, where you have to actually, it's not really a lot of feelings necessarily. It's like building your own shit.
I think they can do a different thing. I think if you play a game like Monument Valley, which is an iPhone game, it's almost like reading a novel when you play that game, but it's not the same. It's totally not a novel. It's something else, completely different.
It's its own thing.
Yeah. I think you can totally tell a story with a game, but it's it depends on what kind of game you do. If it's very very controlled, where you take
Life is Strange is have you played that?
No.
That's an example of a game that has the catharsis elements where they really nicely tie all the chains to one pivotal choice that really makes you cry at the end. It's so well done. But that's the only game I played that had that like feeling of being led through a world like that.
Yeah. And also the guy who did the Chernobyl is doing like a new series based on a game, The Last of Us, which is also
that one.
Yeah, it's also an apocalypse story with the virus and all that.
I could never get into it. It was just too open. Like I was walking around in that like this.
Okay, but people tell me they cry at the end.
I know a lot of people. I couldn't, and there are quite a few of those like with amazing like 3D graphics, and you think you're just standing on top of a hill and you're watching this beautiful place. I've not seen such beauty in a film even, but they're so open. I don't know how people get into them.
But what do you think then filmmakers could get from playing games? Or how do you use game thinking in your work as visual storytellers?
I don't really.
Maybe not.
Maybe not.
Yeah.
Not really. I think film is very much about making something happen inside the person who's watching it, and you really want to try and control that. You
and in games you don't want to control it.
Yeah. You want to make the organs of the body move when you make a film. Like also the brain, you want to make the brain move, and you want to make the heart pound because something is scary and they run. well, the games are also physical in a way. They also, you can also get adrenaline from playing a game.
And also it's physical in the sense that you're doing stuff with your hands. That makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
Okay, if anyone feel free to answer or ask questions or comment. We have time left, I think, to do that. Or else, actually, maybe you have a question for each other.
That's a good one.
Yeah. Maybe you have to think about it.
Yeah, I was thinking, we talked before that you were such a realist and you like realist stuff, but and I was thinking, but you did one of the most cool fantasy things with the Grenze.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, you're describing yourself as such a realist, but do you have any, if you look at sci-fi, do you have any heroes in sci-fi, anything that you think this is amazing sci-fi?
No, I think they all suck.
Really?
Yeah, to be honest. And they're all so fucking sexist. I'm trying to read The Drowned World right now because someone recommended it to me. I'm like, what the fuck? It's like she was lying there like an oiled python, pouting with her red lips and her pink nails, like pink nails in the apocalypse. Come on. It's like, I can't get over that.
The Drowned, is that a ballad novel?
Yeah, that's better. And they're all just putting. There might be wonderful sci-fi writers out there that I just haven't come across because I haven't really got into the genre. But I think for me, as a sort of a realist, there's too much suspense of disbelief for me.
Yeah.
I would want sci-fi to be super scientific, to really take the science seriously and go with it, And I haven't seen that anywhere.
No, you sound like the right person to make it.
Yeah. Yeah, I would love to. And I really have a lot of thoughts about it, extrapolating whatever's happening, like the one you told about. That sounds amazing.
Yeah.
The genetic manipulation thing, oh shit, that's going to explode.
Yeah.
It's going to explode like the internet exploded. It's going to change the world.
That's what they said.
Yeah. No, that's obviously. And that's just the fun thing, and also the annoying thing about humans is that when we stand in front of crazy change, we don't get it. We don't really take it seriously.
Yeah.
Like with climate change, we're like, yeah, but it's scary, but it's abstract. We can't emotionally grasp it.
No.
Unless we make a film about it.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty of it.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Sure. So while you're thinking about a question, Rikke has a question.
Yep.
Rikke.
How do you deal with getting no to pitches? Like, do you change the idea? Do you think they're right? Do you try to be more commercial? What do you do? Do you cry? Do you get depressed? Do you think your idea sucked and they didn't get the point? Like, how do you deal with it? Do you take it as a challenge? Do you think I have to make my idea a better one? Or do you like go? Gunnar said that he had to, for 20 years, find other ways to realize his ideas because he thought they didn't get that his ideas were great. So how do you deal with no?
I don't take it seriously because they're obviously too stupid to get it. So I just, go somewhere else.
Yeah, kind of.
So tough.
I posture myself with more projects that I know that I also love.
Yeah.
So one no cannot kill me. If you have only one project, a no can kill you. But if you have more, you have armor.
Yeah, true. Me too. And also being perfectionist, so you're pretty sure you're not gonna get no when you go there because you've made it in such a polished level. And you have to think about salesmanship. I think it's arrogant when people don't. They like the famous story with Jürgen Leth writing something down on a post-it. Like, listen, that's bullshit. You need to package your thing. You need to make it attractive and appetizing.
Yeah, of course. But you can't always control if that's what they're looking for. If it fits into their pipeline of things they're putting out. Maybe they have a show that's similar.
Yeah, but
like the Rain was originally with the nuclear disaster, but then they were at the same time developing Dark, so we were pushed away from a nuclear disaster to a virus apocalypse.
But you didn't get a no because your project was so well worked through and inspired that you could easily make a small change and it was fine.
Yeah,
that's different. I think that's and I'm a little upset because I see a lot of people being a little bit spoiled. They just put something out on paper and expect everyone to love it, but they don't take the effort to sell and to adapt to who, like you did, to who is the actual audience.
Yeah, and then if you say you never get no's. I've been working longer, I think.
Yeah, I'm very new, so I'm spoiled.
But you're also really good. So, but I think it's never wasted. If you spend 100 hours making a pitch, something's good in there. So it either. I mean, The Rain was 6 years old when it got financed, and we had gotten lots of no's on that. Not because of the content, but because of the the platform we were trying to sell to.
And of course, it's a little bit different when the project is that big and ambitious. Of course, it's a little harder to get it through than if you have some quirky, cheap art husband. But yeah.
So Isabella, when you said all sci-fi is shit, so does that include Blade Runner and Mad Max and Dune and the Space Odyssey?
No, the Space Odyssey and Blade Runner are obviously brilliant. I think the first movie on Mad Max pissed me off like fuck, because it's also super sexist. Like the woman is just there to, oh no, I'm gonna run straight forward, and oh, they took me, and then the whole rest of the film is the guy avenging. I hate that narrative. It's so like dismissive of women as people. So, but of course it's still art, yes, and it's not shit. So you're right, all of these are I mean, Dune. I know, do you have any?
But,
I haven't read the book, so the film is funky.
But you could say Lars von Trier's Element of Crime and Melancholia and Tarkovsky's Solaris.
No, all of those are great.
Those are great.
All of those
okay.
are great.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Then I'm happy. Have you thought about a question for Esben?
It's hard because you're so open. There's everything is just. Would you ever want to try something more art house?
Totally, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd love to. I have stuff that I would like to do, but it's way more easy to get to make something that's not art house.
Of course.
So it gets down in the pile.
Yeah.
Of stuff.
Sometimes it can be very liberating to dare to take that hard stuff. So
yeah,
I would love to see what that would be.
Yeah, it would be totally fun. Yeah. The way I work is I have on my wall, I have like the 5 ideas that are above the line, the 5 I'm developing right now. And then I have below the line, I have all the bubbles, like all this other stuff I love, but I'm not allowing myself to work on because it gets too much.
Yeah.
And definitely there's some stuff in there that would be fun to make.
Maybe switch one of the 5 out. Just one. See what happens.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would.
Okay, and I'll really look forward to a ballad film from you.
I just have to get through the fucking book.
Yeah, read some of the other ones.
Yeah, which are good.
Yeah. Crystal World, for instance, or Crash.
Have
but that was mid.
Have you read the Water World?
Yeah. But I was younger then. Maybe I'll change my perspective.
Give me a walkthrough of the book.
I'll do it. All these books are like the same,
right.
Just set in different worlds.
Right.
But I think they're brilliant. And an art project from you. At one point.
Let's commit to. I'm going to decipher, and you're going to do an art project.
Yeah. Let's promise in front of the world.
Yeah.
And Sarah has a question more.
It's a very, very general question, but I'm just curious because I like picking your brains apart. What are some movies or series coming out this year that you're looking forward to?
I have no clue. I'm totally not connected to the film wars. I don't know what's coming out.
So
the next thing I'm
Trier, of course.
Which one?
Trier is coming up with the 3rd season of Riket.
Yeah.
The Kingdom.
Yeah, The Kingdom. So that's right. Trier is Lars von Trier is shooting The Kingdom.
And I think it's going to premiere in Cannes. No, Cannes next year. No, I don't know. Never mind.
Yeah, but what I'm most curious about right now is I just watched the 2 seasons of Exit, the Norwegian series, and I think it almost feels like sci-fi, super rich people. If there's a 3rd season, I'm gonna watch that right away because it's so foreign to you when you see that universe.
I grew up with those people, so I can't watch it because I hate them so much. Yeah, they're evil.
And Delilah has a comment.
What would you?
What I'm looking forward to the new Dune because I think the fantasy and sci-fi novels that you read when you're a kid or a youngster, like music, that just stay with you. And of course, I read Lord of the Rings, and then I read Dune, and it just stayed with me. I didn't understand that much, but the world was fascinating. And then I saw.
I could add to this though. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. And then I saw the Dave Lynch film, what was a catastrophe with fascinating moments, which stayed with me as well. So I'm looking forward to the next one.
Yeah, because I wanted to comment on, since you mentioned my comment, and then moved forward with the exact same thing I was talking about. Because the Dune film, of course, has become a B classic, the old one, because it's just so bad. Its only redeeming quality, of course, is a very naked Sting. And I very much agree that most of the classic sci-fi was horribly misogynistic and such. But there's such a rich amount of feminist, deeply feminist sci-fi that hasn't been made. So I'm hoping lots of female directors will look to Ursula Le Guin, Octavia Butler, and look at the deeply feminist ways they're writing back. And mind you, a lot of the women writing sci-fi were women writing under men's names. So it's a genre that is screaming for really good production. And hopefully the new Dune will do the books justice. I'm not sure.
Can you name drop 3 great feminist sci-fis?
Ursula Le Guin.
Yeah, but what books?
Well, then you might have a fight amongst the attendees here. The Dispossessed, I think, is probably the best thing she ever wrote.
Yeah,
it's a very what she calls an uncertain utopia. It's a very strange book. But anyway, like I was saying, The Dispossessed, right? Sarah is agreeing with me. But yeah, she and also Octavia Butler's Xenogenesis. That's I think they were trying to make her parable, but the Xenogenesis is the really truly sci-fi. Yeah, more will come to me, but I'm a little bit flustered with anybody that disses sci-fi. Don't diss sci-fi.
Yeah, sorry. But that was the point, to make you come contradict me.
And
how about Handmaid's Tale?
It's fine.
It's fine. Okay.
Yeah, it's all right.
Oh, The Left Hand of Darkness. Read The Left Hand of Darkness. That's Ursula Le Guin too.
And Stephen, you have a question?
Yeah, I was just curious on this discussion of things people have seen or have not seen, and I'm just wondering, creatively, is it better to, do you find it better to completely immerse yourself in the genre and see what other people have done, or is it better to actually have a distance from it so that you might do something that's really different and away from the conventions?
I don't think it matters. I think it gives different things. Like giving yourself filmic input, like immersing yourself in it, gives you a lot of beautiful ideas, but not doing it and doing something different, getting some different inputs, also gives you a lot of beautiful ideas. So I don't think it matters. Both are great ways to go about it.
Yeah, I think I'm thinking a lot about is that if all your references are other films,
that's a problem. Yeah,
that's a problem. I think it's really cool to have references that are music and places and books and other kinds of media.
Yeah. But watching films is so amazing. I started going to the movies again now that they reopen, and it's just like, just wow. Fill me up with sound and image.
Yeah, bigger than this.
Yeah. And or this, because I don't have a screen.
That's true. Okay, so thank you all for great questions. So time is running up, but I think this has been a wonderful panel.
It's been fun.
It's been fun.
Yeah.
And provocative and creative and interesting. And I I think so too. It has been a wonderful panel.
And a wonderful audience. Thank you for being so active.
Yeah, really like that, and for a lot of good suggestions for films to watch and books to read.
We need to. Science needs to promise that we live 120 years so we can do all these films.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sure we will. Thanks for sticking around.
So thanks for sticking around.
Take care.
And